Right, good evening everybody, and welcome to this extraordinary overview and scrutiny panel. If I can go through the housekeeping before we get on to the main agenda items. Councillor Bayford.
Sorry, can I just ask, are proceedings being recorded tonight? Thank you.
The proceedings are being recorded. Speaking under 24.1, that's councillors speaking under 24.1. I have Councillor Ashby, Councillor Rogers and Councillor Martin. Are there any other members who wish to speak under Council Procedure 24.1? No? Okay, in that case, I'll move on. I can confirm at this point that I have agreed for a representative of SMA, Jennifer Maidman, to speak for 3 minutes, and when we get to that point within the agenda, I will call Jennifer Maidman to the front in order that she can speak for 3 minutes. I would remind SMA that we're here this evening to review the procedure and the build-up to the decision that was made on the 29th of October. So we need to keep anything that's said to the point and to the procedures of that meeting. Thank you. Councillor Bayford.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm really glad that SMA have been given the chance to speak tonight. As many know, the Chairman and myself have been pushing for external witnesses to be present tonight. I believe that scrutiny is the one function of the Council which lies entirely with members. Officers support that function, but it should be up to members who is invited to address the panel. I don't think there's anything in the Constitution to contradict this view. With this in mind, I would like to request that River Oaks representatives, Claire Fielding and Colin Smith, be allowed to speak this evening as they are indeed present.
As Councillor Bayford would know, I have received information with regards to this very point from the monitoring officer, so perhaps I can ask the monitoring officer at this point to explain exactly what the situation is. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as your monitoring officer and Director of Governance, I do have a particular concern about asking River Oak or their representative to speak to this panel, because clearly the council, they wish to enter into a contract with the council which is to their financial benefit, and therefore, in my legal opinion, it will be wholly inappropriate for them to speak to this panel for that reason. They have a clear interest, they have a clear role to take, and also I would question, given that the call is about what the opinion of a significant number of members that the report might be read as being loaded, to what extent River Oak, were they to speak, could actually give evidence on that point anyway. But certainly my real concern is about governance generally. I think it's wholly inappropriate for a prospective contractor who was not appointed by the authority, or is recommended not to be appointed by the authority, should then have an opportunity to address the panel. There are other methods, other methodologies, other systems, other processes in place where if they are dissatisfied with the outcome, they can take appropriate legal action.
Yes, stakeholders.
Rubbish!
Thank you, Mr. Howes. Do you have a point, Councillor Eleanor, at this point? It's not normal, but I'm quite happy that if you've got a relevant point to make, we can make it at this point before we get on to the main agenda.
My name is Councillor Eleanor. I disagree fundamentally with what the monitoring officer just said. I think it's a right and a privilege that we can exercise to invite anybody that we want to see and talk to on this issue to this meeting. And I hope that you will take that into account and balance that against the view of the monitoring officer, with whom I violently disagree on this point.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just say to members in the public gallery, this is a very important meeting and I'd like it to be conducted in an orderly fashion. and therefore, although applause are appreciated in some areas, at this particular meeting I think the applause will be better held back until the decision is made, and we move on. On this very point, I have taken legal advice, I have listened to all sides, and at this point I am minded to allow a representative from River Oaks legal team to make a 3-minute speech at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Chairman, can it please be noted that's contrary to your monitoring officer's advice, please?
Yes.
Put it in the minutes.
Certainly.
Thank you.
We can now move on to the main agenda item, which is agenda item 1, and that's apologies for absence. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Parsons, who will be substituted this evening by Councillor Bayford. Apologies from Councillor Dawson, substituted by Councillor J. Jones. Apologies for Councillor Dixon, substituted by Councillor Della. And apologies for Councillor Bainbridge, substituted by Councillor Partington. If I can go back to that, in fact, we have a situation where, I'm very sorry, but Councillor Dixon is being substituted by Councillor Della. Are there any other apologies this evening? Chief Executive.
Chairman, I would just like to make the point regarding your decision to give River Oaks representative an opportunity to make a 3-minute speech, that in doing so you do potentially, and it's for you to note this, that any decision at risk from judicial review.
Well, we don't give a toss now.
Thank you. I will be making the point that was made to me by the monitoring officer before anyone from SMA will be allowed to speak, and I'll be making a point on what they can and what they can't say, because we do want to keep in accordance with the agenda as far as possible, but I do believe it's important that the scrutiny panel have the opportunity of listening presumably the information that will be passed on, and I'll stop it if it's not. The information is relevant to the report that went before Cabinet on the 29th of October. Thank you. So we've had apologies for absence. Agenda item 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest this evening? No declarations of interest. So we can move on to agenda item 3. And agenda item 3 is the whole point of why we're here this evening. So I'd like to welcome the Leader of the Council, Cabinet members and officers who have agreed to be in attendance this evening to help with the panel debate on the Cabinet decision of the 29th of October, which I have called in. The reason for the call-in is as outlined in Principle D of 3.02 within Article 13, which is on page 40 for anyone of those that want to check, of the Constitution. And it's been called in under a presumption in favour of openness. The call-in justification reads, although the report is well presented, in the opinion of a significant number of members, the report may be read as being loaded to achieve the outcome. To enable members and officers to respond to this call-in, I would remind the panel that they are here to review the decision-making process, highlight any flaws within that process, and make recommendations as are considered appropriate. We are not in the business of remaking the decision. That is the responsibility of the Cabinet. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you very much, Chair. In the agenda, page 3, option 4.1, it falls outside the constitution of this council in the sense that it states that after having reviewed all evidence that was presented to Cabinet on the 29th of October, the panel may wish to make recommendations future consideration by Cabinet. It should also include and full council.
said they were going to do that at the beginning.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. I'm getting round to that, and I will include options to the panel once we've had SMA, which I think is appropriate at this point in time before.
I have another point of order. Would any members wish to declare whether they've been whipped this evening?
Where's Miss Whitbash?
I'll ask that question. This panel should be impartial, laying out questions to Cabinet and members, and in no way should there be a block whip of any type, and obviously that will come out once we get into discussion. Councillor Campbell.
Sorry to disagree with you, Chair, but there can be a whip, but it has to be declared. That was my point.
Exactly. So I'll ask the question. Have political groups been whipped with regards to this decision this evening, or the recommendations, I should say, of the panel? Thank you. So if I can get back to bring in Jennifer Maidman to the front, and as I've said before, we need to keep it in accordance with the call-in, and we mustn't wander off of that call-in, and you now have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Shouldn't be limited.
That one? Okay, good. Okay, firstly, can I thank the Chair for allowing me to speak? I do so as a representative of many who care deeply about this issue. Can I also thank Tim House, who kindly spent time yesterday sharing with me his interpretation of the Constitution. Tim was very clear that the convention, that was his word, at Thanet Council, is that only those involved in the original decision could appear at this call-in meeting. Yet here I am. So, thanks to whoever it was who apparently was willing to reconsider in light of new information. And here's hoping that that sets the tone for this meeting. I have 3 minutes. I've been asked to focus on the decision-making process, something I'm familiar with in my own profession. I'm a musician. A musical performance is essentially a decision-making process. But like any such process, it's dependent on the quality of the information which has been provided to the performer. Are the notes wrong? Are the chords correct? Did the performer have a chance to ask questions of the writer and clarify passages which might seem obscure or difficult to interpret? What if entire pages of music were missing? Our performer, or our decision maker, would be severely disadvantaged, and performance would be at best grating, at worst downright excruciating. Regarding Manston, many feel that the content and the timeliness in which information was provided to this meeting, the Cabinet meeting, was similarly inadequate. So I ask this committee to look not just at what is explicit, but also look for the gaps, if you will, the wrong notes and the missing pages. Listen for what's not there. The report itself, on a decision with major implications on a matter of great public interest, did fail to appear until the Tuesday afternoon just prior to the Cabinet meeting. Why was this? Perhaps we are talking in terms of yet another Thanet Council convention, let's use that word. But this appears to many to be in breach of the Constitution, again, which requires reports, if supplementary to an existing agenda item, to appear 5 working days before the meeting. So our decision makers had no time to read, absorb, or research the background to the information they were being given. Secondly, how complete was that information in terms of the legal background? Why was such weight given to the generic telephone advice given to the previous Labour administration by Guy Williams in 2014, a junior barrister at Landmark Chambers? Did the Cabinet have access to detailed legal advice? The exchanges between lawyers which were available to officers and the leader? If so, did they read it? Were they encouraged to do so? If not, why not? And why were KCC legal services, apparently lined up to act for Thanet Council, unceremoniously dropped in July of this year in favour of Sharp Pritchard? River Oak CPO advisor Colin Smith is present, I gather. He's widely acknowledged as the best in the business, former chair of the CPO Association, and worked on HS2, the Olympics, many other major public sector CPOs. The committee might like to ask why there is such a gulf between what Mr. Smith says and what TDC officers are saying as regards.
Can we begin to stand up now, please? Thank you.
democracy for you. As regards openness of the process, why, despite multiple requests to present their case to council, have River Oak been denied the opportunity to do so? Why not this evening? It looks like they will. Has the council really, as it claims, made every effort to work constructively with River Oak? Is that assertion remotely credible in light of the criticisms made in the PwC report? Warnings were given to councillors not to attend information-giving meetings with River Oak. Were such warnings given with regards to Mrs. Cartner, Musgrave and Mullen? I wonder. If not, why not? I'll move, Chairman, to my final paragraph.
If you can make it very, very quickly, because 3 minutes is 3 minutes. I've been very patient, so please wind up. Thank you.
I do appreciate that. The airport's been there for 99 years, though. I'm not on anyone's payroll. I believe in fairness, that's all. Many believe that River Oak, for reasons I do not claim to understand, have not been given a fair hearing. The goalposts, it appears, have been repeatedly moved and sometimes disappeared altogether. How many of TDC's idiosyncratic conventions have played part in this process? I have no idea. For far too long, this council has favoured what some would call a we know best attitude and the do nothing option. Whatever our political affiliations or views on the airport, none of us want to see the fundamental character of our island destroyed by a massive development on Manston. Or anywhere else in Thanet for that matter. All we ask, and I am finishing, all we ask is that River Oak, who have kept faith with Manston and the people of Thanet for 18 months and have continued to turn up despite considerable efforts to thwart their plans, all we ask is they be given a fair and open public hearing. If that is really too much to ask, how can we, in all honesty, continue to look each other in the eye and call ourselves a democracy? Thank you.
Right, I'm now minded to invite a representative of River Oak's legal team to the front, but before I do, can I just point out that in order to keep this evening on track, can I just say that the recommendation that I've received is that it is wrong in conducting a review for the panel to consider evidence which was not available to the Cabinet. If we take into account additional information, we are not reviewing the decision made by Cabinet because Cabinet made their decision in the absence of additional information. Given the above, that's sort of it. That leads me to say to the River Oak representative, what we don't want is evidence that wasn't available to the Cabinet, but I am minded to allow 3 minutes to explain their situation and give the panel members an indication of where they feel the information wasn't imparted within the report that was read on the 29th accurately. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Claire Fielding. I'm a partner in the firm of Brad Lawrence Graham, and we, as you probably know, act for River Oak in relation to the airport site. Thank you, Chair, for giving us the opportunity to speak. In fact, I'm not going to take even 3 minutes, you'll be pleased to hear, and I'm not actually going to give any evidence additionally to anything that has already gone into the process. I note Mr. Howell's and Ms. Homer's points and don't disagree with them. So my intention is simply to provide a few remarks that might assist the panel in its task this evening and in reviewing the decision that's been made. We put in a paper to the Cabinet, which many of you will have seen. We've put in a shorter paper to this committee, to this panel, and that sets out in some detail what we think are specific areas, specific points of detail where River Oak's position has been misstated or confused or where the report is intentionally or otherwise misleading. And both myself and Colin Smith will be perfectly happy to answer any questions about those detailed matters if the panel would like us to do so. Really, all I'm going to say is just to take a step back, really. And in the train on the way down, I was scratching my head and trying to work out how it was that I'm even sitting here, to be honest. So, you know, you have a credible private equity real estate investor and a council with an expressed political will to do a real estate project, in essence. And it was just working out how it was that the report made, in our view, made the cumulative errors that it did, and why that resulted in what we say is the lack of a fair hearing for River Oak. And what I think it really boils down to is this. I think that there's been miscommunication actually on both sides. I would have to say, River Oak sitting in the audience will probably shoot me for saying that, but the information flow hasn't always been perfect. But nevertheless, there's an essential commercial imperative. There is a commercial fact of life that bears on this, and this is not just true of River Oak. This is true of any CPO partner that you might seek out, and they'll all be in the same position. And it's this: there's actually a limit on the amount of upfront investment one can secure, because until you have a CPO in place, until you have the consent for the project, it's extremely difficult to get committed funding beyond in this case, £2 million that's already been provided and is sitting in our client account. So the way forward through that is through engagement, is through taking it step by step. It's the appointment of a partner, working up a business plan in partnership, making a CPO, submitting the CPO for confirmation, and a funding process, discussions with investors going on throughout that process. So that's really where we thought that we were headed after the 4th of September, and so far we haven't come to that place.
Thank you.